offensively, all the talk is quarterback. I thought Bud had a good point on a show this week, and he said this, and it makes a lot of sense that sometimes coaches, the big DJ Brock, controversy, debate, whatever. Sometimes coaches they're so locked in and focused on winning the game, right? And so they do what is best for them to win that game because ultimately that's how they're judged. And he said it's very hard for a coach to get out of that mindset and go and basically throw in the white towel and say, hey, we know we're going to lose if we start the younger guy, or we know we have a greater chance to lose if we start the younger guy, but it's what's best for the program. It's what's best for the future. He said it's easy as a fan to say that because as a fan, you don't care about a 3-9 record versus a 6-6 record. Like they're the same thing to you. It's just failure. But he says as a coach, their mindset is to win every single game. And so he said that's probably part of why Mike's not making a switch, because he knows that DJ gives him thinks, you can disagree with him if you want, but he thinks that DJ gives him the very best chance to win every single play, every single drive, every single game. And to me, that makes sense, right? Like I'm not necessarily saying I agree with Mike. I don't agree with Mike. I think he should do that. I think he shouldn't do that. But I think that's a good point. And I think that's probably why you're going to see DJ start the game on Saturday. Now, if DJ struggles, if he throws picks, if he's just inaccurate, really bad, maybe they go to Brock, maybe they don't. When Florida State goes to a young guy, I think that is Mike Norvell saying, this season is completely over. We just want to build for the future. Like we want to get a young guy in there. We want to build for the future. And if that's if that's what Mike Norvell wants to do, that's fine. If Mike Norvell thinks he can win games with DJ and the guys around him can play better and the offensive line, we can get both tackles back this week and we'll block better and we can run a little bit. I certainly am not going to predict us to go to a bowl, but I think a bowl game is still within reach, as hard as that's going to be. I think you're supremely talented, way more than 5 of the teams left on your schedule when you look at Cal, SMU, Charleston Southern, Duke, and Carolina. And then I think you look at Florida and you say they're a dumpster fire too. And so, yeah, could you get to a bowl? Yes. You have to go perfect in those games because I think you lose the other 3. But if Mike thinks he can win, and certainly if you beat Cal this weekend with DJ, he's going to keep starting him because I do think Mike wants to make a bowl. Not that that's his ultimate goal, but anyway, that's my take on the quarterback. What do you think happens?
Yeah, and we kind of touched on that Sunday, and I said that there's a different view from the fan perspective versus the coach perspective. As a head coach, your focus is how do we win this week? I'm not worried about 2025. That'll come here when it comes. But right now, I care about this week against Cal. And if he thinks DJ Uiagalelei is the best option to win this week, I don't blame him for playing him. But as a fan who's looking beyond just this season, because this season is over. Like, I don't care if you win the next 9 games, your odds are you're still not getting to Charlotte. So you'll end up in like the Tax Slayer Bowl in Jacksonville, and it'll be a forgetful season. Just because of how it started, it'll leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth. Granted, you'll feel excited about, we turned things around at the end of the season, blah, blah, blah. But I don't see this team winning their last 9 games and then a bowl game for number 10. I just don't see it happening. I think that you have 2 very talented, young and raw quarterbacks behind DJ in Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek, and I think you need to go to Brock at this point, like right now, like start him this week. He will not start this week. And, the depth chart came out, DJU, there's no or when it comes between DJ Uiagalelei and Brock Glenn. So at the same time, I don't think, even if Mike Norvell knew he was going to start Brock Glenn this week, he would make that known to anybody. He would keep that to himself, and it'd be a breaking news on Saturday, 7 p.m. on the ACC network that Brock Glenn is starting. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think you have to start really considering the idea that if Brock Glenn keeps sitting the bench, and the same with Luke, but more so Brock, and Mike Norvell continues to trot out DJ Uiagalelei, and the offense looks like this, is struggling to put up 12 points last week, 20 points, whatever it may be. Well, Ohio State wanted me originally, right? I'm pretty sure I can find another Power 5 school that has had a better year than Florida State is going to have this year, and they would love to bring me in as the likely starter for next season. So why would he not do that? And I think that's kind of the mentality as a coach you need to have these days, is understanding it. And Michael Alford, our athletic director, I think he's very very focused in terms of that. He understands why we would have to make a move like that, understanding we might lose a game or two more than we did, but let's keep this guy happy because he might be the answer to winning 10 games in 2025. So I just think this whole DJ experience has been a complete disaster. And I think it's time to cut ties and move on. And I get why the Battle's End may not want to, because I'm sure they invested a lot of money into him. But at the same time, where we are, nobody thought we'd be sitting here 0-3. It is time for Florida State to move on from DJ Uiagalelei, and
So let me
there's no
ask you this.
convincing me otherwise.
Yeah, let me ask you this, and not to. I know I'm not going to convince you. First of all, I don't think the Battle's End cares. They have to write him a check one way or the other. I'll I don't mean to speak for them, but I'll tell you, I don't think they care. What about this from a recruiting perspective, right? If you can, like, if they win this weekend and the offense looks a little bit better, right? And they score 28, 27, right? And they win 27-17 or something. The offense looks a little bit more manageable. It looks like they've found some things. It looks like they've built some things. From a recruiting perspective, what about just selling it to recruits of like, hey, we turned it around, we went 6-3 down the stretch, as opposed to, man, we finished 2-10 and the entire class falls apart. Like, is winning for that? I know it doesn't matter to us as fans, right? 6-6 versus 2-10. Is that an acceptable reason to keep it going? Get right back to chatting with Richie, but first, let me give some love to our friends over at the National Mango Board. We've seen them out at a few events. They've been at games this year, and we certainly do appreciate our partnership with them. Listen, I know the season's not going the way you want it to go, but you cannot be disappointed or unhappy when you are eating a mango. So go to your local grocer. The next time you're in there, make sure that you're picking up a couple of mangoes. If you want to tag them in social media, that certainly helps us. That certainly helps show that we're spreading that message. But again, go to your local grocer, grab some mangoes. We appreciate them for not only their support of FSU athletics, but also our channel. And we appreciate the Mango Board for helping us out this year.
I think the fact that we went 13-0 last year and still had a subpar recruiting class by Florida State standards, Florida State's going to have a top 20 class regardless.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm buying that one just yet.
Yeah, well, we belong in the top, 5 to 8 every year. Call it a top 30 class. I don't care. Is that much of a difference? Michigan last year, we were just talking about the 247 talent composite. I think they had like the 17th most talented team in the country last year, and they won a national title. Recruiting is important and it needs to improve. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you're going to play a guy to barely make a bowl game just to hope that recruiting is there, when none of these guys, maybe one or two, might help you in 2025, that's not a reason for me to continue with DJ. I'm done with him. I hope he proves me wrong. I assume he's going to start this week. I hope he goes out and throws for 5 touchdowns and, just turns the season around. And again, it's not all his fault. He's not got a whole lot of help from his offensive line at all, which has been terrible. He's not got help from his receivers, not got help from his tight ends. So I don't blame everything entirely on DJ. I just know the fact that he will not be here next year, no matter what. Like, this is his last year of college football. It's time to see what you have behind him to know, do we have somebody that we can ride with in 2025, or do we need to make the decision and potentially try and hit the portal again and see if you can get lucky and strike gold there?
So I think what gets lost on that some is I do think, I think I trust Mike enough to think that he does know that, right? I don't think, and I'm not saying that this would necessarily happen, but I think there's a decent chance that this happens. I don't think Mike needs to see Brock come in and just look, try to be nice with how you say this, right? But I don't think
You
Mike
know,
needs to,
from
I'll
the
just say it.
Wolves, and yeah,
I don't think Mike needs to see Brock come in and just get his head beat absolutely in and get embarrassed, like lose games by more than we are now. I don't think Mike needs to see that to know whether or not what the future holds. Right? Like I think if Brock's not able to do it, and that doesn't necessarily mean that like some live reps wouldn't help him. That doesn't mean that like later on in the year it wouldn't be smart to see what you have from the younger guys. But I would be shocked if Mike doesn't already know that because of what Brock's not able to do against like our second and third and scout team defense, right? And so like if I'm Mike, maybe I already know that. I think that's something that's probably lost on the debate when people are raging on social. And I'm not necessarily saying you, just like, chanting from the
I'm
stands
raging.
and everything else. But I think that Mike, there's a good chance that Mike already knows that and thinks like, hey, dog, if you can't get it done against like the second and third string of our defense, like I ain't putting you out there to die, and make it look even worse. Like if I'm Mike Norvell, no, I don't want to lose games by 30, right? Like I don't, keeping it close. Like there is something about that having, giving yourself a chance to win games. So I don't know. I think that's probably lost on it a little bit. Not necessarily saying that. The other thing I think is my gut is that it would be exactly like what happened to Florida, right? Like you maybe you bring Brock out. I mean, you don't play another scrub team until the very end, but like Lagway comes out and throws for 450 yards and goes off, and everybody's singing his praises. And then he comes out against A&M, goes like 5 for 13, is sacked 3 times, has just like 2 interceptions, like against an okay A&M team, and then what do you do if you're Norvell? Like, do you have to turn back around and go back to, do you just keep trying him out there if it's like significantly worse? Like, it's just a mess. I mean, that
so
said,
on that point, yeah, no, on that point, it is and as a fan, me sitting here behind a um, microphone and a camera, it's easy for me to say that, and I feel that we should move on. But to that point, TJ, it's really difficult. I remember my freshman year, 2006, Florida State. Drew Weatherford beat out Xavier Lee for the starting quarterback job. Or in 2007, Weatherford really struggled, and then they bring in Xavier Lee. He beats Alabama. It was turned out to not be a very good Alabama team. That was Nick Saban's first year, and then things kind of went south. A lot of things were off the field related. He enjoyed potbellies much more than he enjoyed the film room, which is fine. And you came back to Drew Weatherford, and then the next year it was Drew Weatherford, Christian Ponder, Devontae Richardson. We didn't know. Once you make a decision at quarterback, you want to feel comfortable that you can stick with that one. Because once you're changing them out every quarter or every 2 or 3 games, that's when it becomes an issue. And that's why where I have sympathy for Mike Norvell, that as a head coach of this program, it's a much more difficult decision for him than it is for me as a fan sitting behind the keyboard in a microphone expressing my opinion. I just think we should move on, but I also fully understand Mike Norvell has a heck of a lot to consider than I do.
yeah, tougher situation for him for sure. More to risk, more to gain. More to risk, less to gain, probably. Right? Like,
Yeah. At
and
this
like you
point,
said,
yeah.
like he Brock comes out and I mean, if you start Luke over him, Brock's transferring. There's no way he's sticking around, right? Like he probably
Gone.
entered the portal that weekend, which is tough. So you can't really start Luke, but you start Brock, and he throws 3 picks in the first half against a team that doesn't turn the ball, doesn't take away the ball. And I'm not saying he would. Like maybe he'd be great. Throws 3 picks in the first half. What do? You go back to DJ? Do you go further down the road to Luke? Kill your true freshman or whatever. So it is a tough spot. But all that said, I expect DJ to play, and we'll see if anybody around him wants to play well. If we can get some tackles back, if he can, I would start pushing the ball down the field. To be very honest with you, like they did in the second half, where he actually looked serviceable. Don't throw 17 screens to open the game up. That would be what I would advocate for. I don't care who throws the ball. Don't start out with 16 screens, and we'll probably be just fine. So,
Yeah.